Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Irina Cismas, Head of Marketing at Custify, and I'll be your host for this final webinar of 2024. When I started planning this theme back in October, I knew I wanted it to end the year on a high note, not just wrapping it up, but delivering real value that we can carry into 2025. I love a good retrospective, but I'm even more excited about what's next. So I like to start the year with a solid plan, a clear strategy, and a sense of direction. That's why today I'm bringing you not one, not two, but three different customer success strategies and three fantastic guest speakers. Sara Arreco, Head of CS at Antavo, Warren Gash, VP of CS at Sympa, and Porter William, VP of Customer Success at BrightHire. Sara, Christopher, and Porter, thanks for joining us today and taking the time to share your insights with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And for everyone joining us live or catching the replay later, consider this our Christmas bundle of insights. I mentioned I prepared three different CS strategies. We were gonna talk about customer journey mapping, then we're gonna transition to a digital CS strategy, and last but not least, we're gonna cover also the expansion. We do have a packed agenda and a lot of things to cover. And speaking about those three different CS strategies, once you map them out and you identify those key data points, you definitely don't want to manage it all manually, I assume. And who wants to be Grinch bogged down in spreadsheets and posts? So don't forget that CSP like Custify can streamline it all, making it easy to implement what we discussed today efficiently and at scale. Housekeeping items. So that everyone is on the same page. This event is being recorded and you will receive a copy afterwards. No worries. I know that that's the number one question that we receive on chat. Do I receive the recording? Yes, you do via email. We value your participation, so please feel free to ask the questions using the question tab or chat function. I'm going to make sure I'll monitor and we'll try to answer them throughout the session or during at the end of the discussion. We're going to save a few moments for the a few minutes for the Q&A. And now, to kick things off, I want to start with a quick read on where's everyone heading in 2025. And we've put together a poll to see which go-to-market and CS strategy are top of mind for you all. So I'm going to publish a poll and I'm going to invite you to, one sec, add poll, publication, next. Add poll. No. Give me one sec. Here's the published poll. Is everyone seeing it? Sara, Christopher, Porter, do you?
I can see him.
Okay, perfect. We'll give it a few moments. I invite everyone to participate. I think it's important to set the foundation of the conversation because we'll start discussing about the customer journey. We'll approach the digital strategy and then we'll continue with the expansion. But I'm curious, how is the distribution? So it seems like we have a sales led with high touch, but also a hybrid approach. I'm curious. How do you see one of those? While we are waiting for everyone to submit their vote, do you see product led or sales led or hybrid picking up momentum, or is it a mixed bag out there? Sara, do you want to try to answer to this?
I think it very much depends on the product that companies are using, because you have more simple products that are so much more adaptable to a more hybrid and even more digital kind of approach, or you have more complex product that literally require a high touch approach.
Mhm. Yeah, the product-led growth specifically, there's a bit of a split between like digital CS is one thing, product-led growth is another thing. They they feed each other, but they can also be in different areas. And a lot of products, most of the ones I've worked on have not been very suitable for a product-led growth approach, at least not in their initial phase. They may have gotten there eventually. And so that is some products can really build that virality internally, and some don't. So, but I think product is an important partnership in a digital CS motion for sure.
In our case, it seems like a hybrid approach for both go-to-market and the CS. So it's a combination of the two, followed closely by sales led with high touch CS. And with this being said, I want to start up a discussion with what I consider to be the backbone of any solid CS strategy, and that's understanding the customer journey. And Sara, I'll start with you because I know that you have it on your roadmap for next year. And to be honest, when we debriefed and we picked the theme and you mentioned this one, I was surprised because I've often seen product teams leading this type of projects. In some cases, it was marketing, but never CS, to be honest. So first of all, kudos for making it a priority for next year. And now let us know what led the team at Antavo to drive this initiative from a CS perspective.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think there is a few reasons really for why customer success is driving the customer journey mapping at Antavo. The first thing is that there's the pain points, honestly, that the teams are feeling. As customer success, we are always responsible for successes, but also failures of our customers. And that includes instances where we're completely in the driver's seat and really driving success, or sometimes even driving failure. And we're responsible for that. And some instances where we're not in the driver's seat. But at the same time, the responsibility is always ours, and customer success is always the ultimate responsible party. So this means that it's 100% in our interest to drive all of the internal initiatives that help us in retaining customers, in upselling customers, in making sure that customers pay more money, stay with us for the longest period of time. So designing a better, a more seamless, even tidier, really, customer journey is definitely one way to be leaders of the change that customer success needs right now. And of course, it's a collaborative effort. So it's not like customer success is imposing our point of view on everybody else. All the other teams like product or marketing, sales, they're all very much involved in the process. But I think it's because it's in our very much interest to make sure our customers have a positive experience with us. That's why we're in the driver's seat.
How are you planning to actually map this customer journey? I know that it was something that it stayed in your mind, and I remember you told me that okay, everyone was talking about, but no one was providing concrete things on how to actually execute it. So
Yeah.
how was it in your case? How are you planning to roll it out?
Yeah, I think it's very funny. I listen to tons of podcasts. I went to tons of webinars, and everybody can say, "Yeah, we sat all in a room, and in 6 hours we mapped our whole customer journey." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not happening. That's not that's just not happening." So for us, it's taking a lot longer, to be honest, just because we have a very complex product and it involves loads of different teams. It's as I said before, it's a collaboration effort. I'm not imposing my view on anybody. So I think what the place where we started was first of all understanding that everyone has an impact on customer experience. And we started with a survey for internal awareness and try to understand how are you aware of the impact that you have? Even you person in HR, you in engineering, you in finance, are you aware? And the results were not where I wanted them, to be honest. So we started customer journeys for that reason, and also to tidy up a little bit the customer experience. I made sure to map out what every single team and every single role in the company has to contribute to the customer journey, all the interactions, direct and indirect, that they have with customers, from sending invoices to sending email for onboarding, etc., etc. And then we're doing a prioritization exercise right now to understand what is more urgent, what do the teams want us to start and to start working on. And then we're going to build every mini journey based on that, making sure to highlight what the customer sees, what happens behind the scenes, and also the importance of every single step.
And in the case of day-to-day CS operations, so in the case of your team, how will you leverage those? How are you leveraging the customer journey? How do you use the insights that came out through the exercise that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I think it very much depends on the journey. Just because, for example, if we're talking about tickets, we might be looking at time to resolution, making sure that customers' complaints are reduced, etc. But for other journeys, like showcasing customer roadmap, we're looking at other metrics or other success criteria. So I think it's really it's very specific to the mini journey that we want to tackle.
So you split the whole journey. Are you, speaking of that, are you tackling step by step? So for instance, okay, now that we map the whole process, we make it a priority for next year to, I don't know, improve the flows and the processes from the onboarding, let's say, or from the first initial moment. So do you tackle all of them from once or step by step?
No, we are tackling step by step. That's why the prioritization exercise is so important, because I don't want to necessarily start from onboarding. I want to start where the pain is. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to map out all the interactions and where the pain points are. So every team has scored from 1 to 5, like we really need to work on this right now, or I'm fine, don't need to look at it. And based on that, we are deciding how to proceed.
Porter, I know that your focus for next year will be on building a digital CS strategy. Do you have a customer journey mapped out that supports that?
Yeah, lightly, particularly in the early time. We've been really focused on time to value and getting people into a couple initial major objectives and milestones, because thus far, in our current state in our business, most of our customers are not in a we're not in a land and expand motion with most of our customers. We have some with where there's growth, but in a lot of cases, our customers are sold out right from the beginning with enterprise licenses. So we're really focused on getting them up to speed with an initial use case and then helping them flesh out into their full use case. And it's the initial journey for about the first 6 months. We haven't done a complete journey map, but the first 6 months of kind of walk or crawl, walk, run. And so that's where we've been particularly focused. And implementation. So Sara, you were saying like haven't been super focused on onboarding. Onboarding has been our major focus, because if we can get our onboarding right, then customers coast for the majority of the rest of the year quite well with our product. But if we don't do that, then we're going to be dealing with just friction for months and months and months. So we've been really focused on that early stage.
Speaking of that, Porter, I used to focus on, or not sure if you guys at BrightHire have this type of statistics in which you tied up the time to value with an element of retention prediction. So a statistic or a North Star metric, such as if the client finishes the onboarding in 3 months or in 2 months and a half, the likelihood of him to remain and to renew is closer to, I don't know, 93% or 94% or whatever. So those type of metrics, do you find a correlation between the time to onboard and to the renewal with concrete metrics or KPIs?
I've done that in the past at other companies. At
Mhm.
BrightHire, we're not at that point yet. We've been doing a lot of our data readiness. So that is the kind of thing I want to be able to do as we go into this next year. And a year from now, I might actually have something to tell you right now. From this past year, I couldn't have even told you for a good chunk of the year how long an onboarding was taking. So I'm actually just now at a point where it's like, hey, I can actually measure this. So I've been getting a lot of the fundamentals in place to even be able to measure some of these things, much less have a benchmark and correlate to an outcome. But I'm a year from now, I'm actually hoping I can do that.
I want to ask. I'll ask you, Porter, but feel free to Christopher, for instance, to jump in, because I want to tie the customer journey to expansion as well. Why you are not the first one who is from whom I'm hearing, Porter, that it's hard to measure some things. So why do you think it was harder to measure the time to onboard? Was it because of every customer has a different use case, or is it because of the particularity of each and every one? Why is it hard?
The biggest thing is just that we hadn't set it up, and because we just hadn't set up the mechanics to get it done. It just hadn't been a thing anybody was looking for, and so getting that. It wasn't super difficult to do. It's still not automated. I still need to tackle that, but I could at least with some manual work, we're getting it now. But it just wasn't a thing we'd prioritized before. The thing that has made it somewhat tricky is the definition is like, okay, so wait, is it the first time? We're an interview intelligence platform. People use our platform to help our recruiting teams use our tool to help with their hiring process. So it's like, okay, is it the first time somebody does an interview? Is it the first time, or is it right after we train and go live? Is it the first time they actually get out to a full, where there's a number of points at which you can choose to draw a line, and depending on where you choose to draw that line, you'll get widely differing outcomes. And so kind of that has been a point of discussion. And in particular, the handoff, as I've recently switched from having CSMs do everything, onboard and then manage the customers, to having an implementation manager take that over. The handoff between those two teams, they're both within me, so we're working really close. But the handoff is creating not friction, but just it's a question. It wasn't even when a CSM does everything, you don't have to answer some of these questions. They just kind of roll with it. But when you start having someone go, okay, well, is my job done yet? Or am I still responsible? You have to start answering some of those questions.
Christopher,
do you mind if I ask a question, Porter?
Yeah, go for it, man.
So you broke out, you had a CSM that was running the entire end-to-end process, and now you've gone into more of these specialized positions within CS. This is something that for full transparency, I've done in the past as well, and then actually needed to roll back elements. So what drove your decision-making around deciding that the CSM should no longer be running this end-to-end process, and you get better business results from driving the specialization?
Yeah. So I have an analogy. Anyone who's known me for a while has heard me talk about spikes and plates. So, and I don't think this is true in all SaaS businesses, but it's at least been true in all the ones I've been working in, which is managing, once a customer is live, the amount of energy it takes to support them is fairly steady and long-term application of effort. So it's like a plate, kind of thin and long. An onboarding implementation is spiky. It's high intensity, it's short-term, it's very date-driven, and it's urgent. And when I start out, and this is what I found out when I got to BrightHire, that's continued the picture I've seen before, is you have CSMs with a bunch of plates of their steady accounts, and then they've got their onboardings, and those are spikes. If you have spikes on top of a bunch of plates, people end up way over capacity. And when that happens, because of the urgency and date-driven nature of onboarding, they prioritize onboarding and they start dropping the balls on plates. And you can get by with that for a while. You really can. And there's a point where people start dropping, they have no choice but to drop painful balls that hurt. I talk about glass balls and plastic balls. You're juggling, you drop the plastic balls. When people have no choice but to start dropping glass balls, you have a problem. And so by breaking it out, an implementation manager who's managing nothing but spikes can handle a lot of spikes, because the spikes drop off and they go away. The stack of plates keeps growing. So anyway, that is what I'm seeing. And it has made a significant impact on my team in just the last 5 months, getting this implementation manager in. Even though it hasn't been neat and tidy, we're still sorting out a lot of the transitions and like the people kind of finding their swim lanes and stuff, but it's making an impact. And I can already see that the CSMs are going to be able to stay a lot more focused, because we have commercial CSMs who are managing renewals. I think that's a big part of this dynamic, where I really need them focusing on renewals and transaction, and focusing on de-risking renewals that are 6 months out. That kind of stuff just doesn't happen if they're focused on the onboarding customer who just signed and is ready to go tomorrow. So that's the dynamic that I'm navigating. And so that's why I made that decision.
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense, especially if you're very focused on time to value.
Yeah.
Christopher, do you see, I know that your focus for next year will be on the expansion side, but do you think customer journey mapping can also support an expansion strategy? And if so, how?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing with expansion is that you can't run before you can walk. So, having a strong customer journey mapping it's essential in order to have really like a foundation, a foundation of predictability, of engagement, which will then build trust and will then derive value for the customer. I mean, you need all of those things in place in order to be in the position to drive predictable expansion down the line. So I think this is it's an absolute must.
And in the case of the Sympa as an organization, did you guys have a similar project as Sara was mentioning earlier, or how did you map it out?
Well, I'm quite new in the role, so I can't really tell you historically. My observation, with full transparency, is that we haven't gone about it with the same degree of rigor as Sara has mentioned. I mean, I have to say that I love your approach, and I was madly writing down notes because I think this is exactly what we need to do. I mean, needless to say, everybody who has some form of customer interaction is therefore going to have an impact on the perception that the customer has on the service. That is going to have some form of ripple effect on satisfaction, health, the building of champions, likelihood of renewal, and then, like in my case, around my focus, also the ability to open up expansion channels as well. And I think we're seeing some examples at times of times where the end-to-end customer journey has sort of let us down a little bit, and then has led to adverse outcomes for us in CS. So absolutely essential piece of work to do.
We have 2 questions from the audience, and I want to address it because they make sense in the context of the conversation. And I think it's a Sara question. Neta asked, how do you encourage other teams to collaborate on this customer journey mapping for them to acknowledge its importance? So how did you promote it, and how did you sell it internally? And how did
I think that's a good question. I think the main thing is that we did have a customer journey before, but the customer journey mapping is never quite completely done. So as your company evolves, as you develop more product, more capabilities, more features, you're always going to need to review it a little bit. And then at the same time, and to do that, you need really leadership approval. So I'm answering directly to our COO, our Chief Operating Officer, and the first thing I did was go to her and say, look, we need to do this. I built my business case. I say, okay, these are the reasons. This is what I'm hoping to achieve. This is why we need all of this. And then together we presented it at leadership management meetings and made sure that everybody had the buy-in. Everybody understood what was going to be also their benefit. I think that's a really key part, to make sure you're talking to everybody's language. Because it's so easy, especially for a product or engineering team, saying, oh, it is not my problem. I don't want to hear about this, because it's just going to be a waste of my time. I don't interact with customers directly. And sure, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you do not have an impact, because it's a collaboration effort. And ultimately, we all need the company to retain customers. Well, otherwise, we're all out of a job, really. So ultimately we are all working towards the same goal, and that was buy-in, I think.
Was there something that triggered you to go and have a discussion with your COO? Or do you remember what was the thing that made you think, you know what, I'm going to pause everything that we do and I'm going to ask for a customer journey mapping project?
Yeah, so I'm also heading customer experience together with customer success, and we were looking for new initiatives that we could run this year. We run voice of the customer, we run loads of stuff, but I was looking for new ideas, to be honest. And that's when I said, okay, why do not I ask internally? And that's when I found out that a lot of our teams did not have a lot of awareness on their impact on customer experience. So that's when I definitely took the final decision, said, nope, this is not going to work. We need to work on this. We need to make sure that everybody knows how much their job actually counts, because it does count, and it's really fundamental that everybody gets it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Most probably we will gonna, so for everyone who is watching this live, use the question tab or the chat function to ask any other question about the customer journey mapping process. We have one question, but I'm gonna leave it at the end of the conversation. And now I want to switch gears to the digital CS strategy. So I want to ask you, Porter, what do you need for the successful digital strategy next year? How are you going to tackle this part?
So a lot of what I'm looking at is so a couple pieces: automation and content. And a bit the way I'm really thinking about this is trying to create different resources, digital resources, in the form of mostly short form videos or kind of interactive type forms, where we're able to replace what is today a series of guided discussions around workflow and configuration choices and things like that, where a smaller customer can still go through something to help them reach these decision points and help explain some things that are a bit nuanced. And so, like, the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, it's in the help article, but nobody reads the help article, you know? And so how can we serve up content that that is automated in the early journey, in the sequence of, okay, first things this, then this, then this. What are the things you need to think about? And we serve it up through an onboarding, an interactive onboarding workspace that we share with the customer, and for like all the tasks and things. And today, those tasks take them to our content in our help center. But I'm trying to build more engaging content that folks will actually work through on a self-serve way. And I've been mapping this out through very short, highly edited video content, which is different than recording a webinar or recording a instructor-led training. The kind of content here, you need to be able to really edit it down so that it's short, punchy, and gets the point across quickly. And then presenting them with questions, and then using type form because Typeform lets you embed a variety of multimedia things and then ask a question and then take them to a branching point. And then it's like, okay, so you chose path A. Here's a couple things for you to now do. Now go do these tasks and map that out, and replacing what is today a human conversation without it while still making it feel like a rich, engaging activity. So that's one of the big things I'm mapping out right now. We did actually just launch a pretty significant freemium option through a big partner in our ecosystem that has caused a big influx of kind of limited trial customers, basically. Okay. And it's been really successful. But one of the big things, they created a forcing function for me to work with our product and engineering team to map out a very really delightful onboarding account setup flow that has completely taken a piece off of my hands for my team of what was usually a manual account setup, setting up their primary integration, inviting initial users. It works so well. Now, it only works for this very defined path of a customer with a certain tech stack combo through this partnership and stuff, but it's beautiful. And now, and it just created the burning platform for us to get something done that I've been talking about for the last year. And now that work is done, now we're going to start expanding that into other paths. And so of customers with different configurations and things like that. And in that process, one of the things that I really appreciated was a conversation with my VP of engineering. I am prone to overcomplication. I don't know if any of you out there are like me, you do this, you get the context and the nuance, and next thing you know, you're like that guy with the crime map with strings and pins. And my VP of engineering has a real talent for simplification. And he's like, no. So we actually pulled back and we got ourselves into some very simple funnel buckets. We're taking very much a kind of like a marketing automation approach to this experience of, once we get them through this very short onboarding process, some very simple defined milestones to get them through. And it's a very simple, and I stripped out a lot of the complication and nuance that I was trying to put in. He was right. So my big advice to folks is, as you're trying to map out a digital strategy, start small with a single objective in mind, and give yourself, think of it like a marketing funnel. How do you get people in, and what are the steps you need them to get through, and keep it really simple with a simple objective, and then move on to a next one. But if you overcomplicate it, you get paralyzed, and it makes creating that journey really hard. So special content for the purpose, made for that purpose. Simple automations and very simple stage funnel definitions of what you're trying to get your target to, what actions you're trying to get them to take.
Porter, based on what you said, to follow-up questions, I'm curious, you mentioned from the very beginning the content part, and now the marketing person needs to ask, how did you identify what type of content, what's the content all about? What was the source of inspiration that triggered that particular content?
So, a good example of this was, okay, so today we have this series of for example, helping a customer set up an integration with their applicant tracking system. It's one of the very first steps that we have to do for onboarding. In a high touch customer setup, that is one of our first implementation calls after the kickoff. We're sharing the requirements. We hold their hand going into the ATS, setting up an API key, setting up a webhook. What we did is we looked at that conversation. I'm sitting down with product and going, okay, so the thing we need to do is this, and this. The outcome of this discussion are these steps. How can we make that really easy and embed that into this onboarding journey? Well, it turned out they were able to pull some stuff from the partner system, bring that in, make it easy. Then there was we're like, well, we don't know what we can do. We can at least link them out to it. And we were able to make it self-explanatory enough with the information we presented on the previous screen that 90% of people get through that they jump the chasm fine because we gave them the heads up. Now, what I ended up doing was making a traditional approach would be, let's make a training video of walking people through this. I made a very compressed, just a few minutes video of the preview of the steps everyone's going to go through, highly edited, highly scripted, and put that at the front end of this experience. I see a lot of engagement of people watch the video and they sail through this onboarding experience now. So by giving them a preview of what's going to come, making sure we give them signposts in the product along the way that the product led them to the place they needed to go, we were able to get them to reliably take the actions. And then we build in an automation that says, if someone initiates the sign up and within I can't remember what the time frame, an hour or two, some reasonable period of time, that if you haven't gotten to that point, you probably got stuck or got intimidated, we trigger them an email from me that says, hey, I'm Porter, blah, 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 blah. We noticed you got started. If you need help finishing this setup, schedule a call with us. And we've been able to catch those people who did get intimidated or got stuck with those few people. We give a scheduled session to walk them through it but 90% of people are getting through it successfully. So we're trying to catch the exceptions with a little bit of hand holding, but most people are successfully getting through it when we armed them with what's to come and a well-structured product experience.
I want to tackle one question from our audience. Francisco asked, what are the best approaches to drive upsell via CSQLs in the one-to-many digital model? Any examples and outcomes that you can share?
So, man, you know what? I am actually not in a good position Francisco, it's a very good question. So the customers that I'm running through this digital model are small customers with no upsell possibility. And so CSQLs, this is a thing has come up in I've thought about. I have not done this at all. And I would need to put some much better thought into it. The first thought, Christopher or Sarah, jump in if you've got hey, I've done this. Thought on this, when I thought about it in the past, is signals. What are the signals in system-driven behavior that you could capture through analytics and a dashboard that equal, if in the last month they have done this, this, and this, that equals an opportunity. That is it's probably not perfectly predictive, but it's likely circumstance that somebody should probably go talk to them. Behavior-driven, observable behavior-driven definition that you can then flag on a dashboard, automate a message into a Slack channel or something like that says, hey, this customer has met these criteria and let's create this is now an opportunity. Someone go qualify if this opportunity is real or not. That's my thought, but I have not done that. And I don't think that's going to be in my priorities this year.
Sara, do you work with CSQLs?
To be honest, very rarely, just because also our customers are usually big enterprises. So we drive, for us, customer success is also a commercial team. So we usually try to keep it internally as much as possible, unless there is the need for a full sales process. So for us, it's a little bit different, but I completely agree with what Porter said. So I think it's about studying the behavior, knowing what successful customers look like. What is your definition of a successful customer? So how fast do you complete your setup? How fast do you complete your initial onboarding, et cetera, and then that's basically a signal for understanding who to target.
Good. I'm also keeping an eye on the time, and I want to allocate a few minutes at least to tackle the expansion part. I know that we had, as I mentioned at the beginning, a packed agenda, and it's hard to speak in less than 1 hour to tackle all 3 of them. But with your permission, we'll do some follow-ups next year. So if you are interested in diving into specific one CS strategy, put it on the chat, and we'll try to accommodate it on the agenda for next year. Now, let's tackle the third strategy that we mentioned at the beginning, the expansion. And that's a Christopher topic. How are you planning to approach it? And what are some specific steps you are focusing on in order to make it effective?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for us, maybe a little bit of background is, similar to Sara, where also this like sales-led, like high touch approach. Most of our customers, we've got a range of customer size, but the majority of our focus is going to be on the larger enterprise type customers. So, with that, we've identified a few different expansion levers, and I think at its most basic, you can break these out into 2 streams. I mean, most likely these won't be like revolutionary, but they are important to try to get right. So the first is like automated expansion. And, here I think that we benefit on 2 fronts. I mean, firstly, we've got very healthy, shall we say, annual price increases. And I know that this is something which there's quite a lot of like nervousness around in the market. Can we drive annual cost increase or annual price increase to our customers? What if they push back? What if, driving up the price by 5% is going to lead to churn? Well, I was actually speaking to our board about this, and, they've got a number of portcos, and they've run a number of studies, and they've seen that there's virtually 0 correlation between like modest price increases on an annual basis, especially if they're well defended, well argued, and churn. So, if this isn't something that you guys are already doing, if you feel like, you're sort of extracting 1 or 2% in annual price increase, make that change immediately. Try to adjust that in your contracts moving forward. It's the easiest way that you can just go from like default 100% NRR to like default 105% NRR or something even punchier, especially if you feel like you're actually delivering like a core value, which means that there's no reason to move away just for a few euros or 5% increase. The other side is that on the automated front is that we've got our pricing model is like based on per seat or like per user. And of course, like what that means is that in different economic climates, like you open yourselves up to a degree of risk, but also you can open yourself up to a lot of opportunity when the market rebounds. I'm no economist, but I think we're probably the worst times are behind us. So again, this is something that we're feeling increasingly bullish about going into next year. Then on the other side, we've got the CS driven expansion, right? And that can look different from company to company. Like in our case, I'm really focusing our efforts on 2 areas. And this is based on what we can see within the existing base. Those 2 areas are kind of your classic upsell. So, we, unlike Porter, like we've signed a number of customers without an intentional land and expand motion, but we've signed a lot of customers that are not maxed out. Mm-hmm. And, there we've got tremendous opportunity to really build a total addressable market or a serviceable addressable market from our existing customer base and say, right, like where does the white space exist? And there is a lot of it. And there we're looking into like geographies. So, customer uses us in geography X, and, they're also present in, geographies A, B, and C. So we're looking at geographies, we're looking at subsidiaries, business units, we're looking at child organizations, parent companies in some cases. And, this is an exercise that very rarely we've actually taken the time to do within customer success. We can do that as like a sort of a top-down approach to some extent, so that we've got a sense of what does the opportunity look like within the base. And we can also run that on a CSM by CSM level as more of like a bottoms up approach and find something in between. But there's a lot of opportunity there. And then the other side, and this is probably the most controversial, but I think all companies that have been around for a few years have probably faced this or are already tackling it, or don't quite know what to do about it. But we've got legacy pricing with the existing base. And if you look at the delta between what customers pay today versus what list price looks like at the moment, there's a very, very scary gap. And hey, like no surprise there, right? But I mean, what do we do about it? I mean, clearly, like there's one approach where you craft, the world's best email and you press send and you see what happens.
You go run and hide.
Yeah, exactly. And that would probably be the last thing I do in my role, right? So that's not gonna work. So instead, like we've actually started to split out. We've taken what is like a big opportunity and also like potentially like a large problem. We've just split customers out into different slices, and we've said, right, like we've got these customers that meet this criteria. Be based on health, be based on NPS scores, be based on like the size of the delta, and then like set a process specifically for that slice of customer. Is it CS led? Is it sales led? Is it even like leadership team led because of the strategic importance of the customer? And then you can think about, how do we phase these increases? Do you go from current price to list price? I mean, it's an option, but it's not realistic. It won't be well received by the customer in most cases. Or do we talk about, this is where we need you to go. These are the steps to get to that place. Lock the customer in for a longer period of time, phase the increase. But of course, in these scenarios, CS is value exchange, isn't it? So, in order to ask for more revenue, we need to give something in return. So we've been thinking very carefully about how does that practically look from a product basis and to some extent from a service level as well. So needless to say, there's a lot that we can do. There's a lot that we can be sinking our teeth into next year to drive quite significant expansion, and something tells me the team's going to be pretty busy.
Chris, question: is that expansion for the in your land and expand model? Are the CSMs driving that expansion, or is it like a partnered account manager? Is an account executive who runs the early sales and keeps driving further expansion? Like, what's your model there?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what the model has looked like, and then I can tell you about how I'm designing it, since I'm quite new in. Like up until now, it has been leave the CSM to their own devices. They're running onboarding. They're picking up some Slack for support. We've got quite a technically complex product as well. So they spend a lot of time interfacing with customers to help them navigate the platform to get value. They have a lot on their plates as it is. Having expansion on their plates is, I mean, number one, difficult from a capacity perspective.
Okay. Yes.
And number two, I think while CSMs are, jacks of all trade in many cases, we've got to be very clear about what are the expectations on the CSM? What are the behaviors I want to see? I really what's the profile of a CSM at, in my case at Sympa. And so moving forward, we're not going to continue to have the CSM run this. We're doing two things. I mean, first is more like specialization within the CS umbrella. So bringing in sort of your a key account manager type profiles who would be commercially focused on a small portfolio of their own, but then also supporting the CSM. So the CSM is creating the value for the customer, essentially is creating opportunities for this key account manager to come in and help with the closure, which of course is a slightly different profile. And in the interim, we're pulling in help and collaboration from our sales team. They already have to some extent they got the bandwidth, and they certainly already have the skill set and competence. So
yes,
that's how we can make sure that we still succeed in H1, and we're not sort of forecasting this hockey stick outcome in in the second half of next year.
The ability for a CSM, or the skill set to prospect within a customer base, is a skill set, and it's one that I often find folks who are traditional CSMs often don't have. And so in a land and expand model, where you have a lot of expansion opportunity among subsidiaries and children accounts and geographies and stuff, you've really got to have someone with that prospecting muscle. And so I think that's a good thing to be thinking about. Yeah,
I think it's also interesting in terms of the profiles that you're hiring. I, for example, for one, love to hire from sales. Being from sales myself, I like hiring salespeople that want to come into customer success. So I have a question for you both, is actually what usually who do you look to hire if you're looking for this kind of role?
Yeah, I mean, from my side, I can briefly answer. I think the commercial background is most important for me. So as we know, if you type in CSM or customer success manager to LinkedIn, you are going to get a smorgasbord of like different profiles, because CS means something different at every org, right? So the important thing is does the CS that this person has done in the past, does it look like the CS that I'm hiring for and the behaviors I need to see within my organization? And a fail-safe is often like going towards more of a sales profile. So yeah, I'm open to both parts, I suppose.
This is another argument from like my point earlier about splitting. Like when you have a CSM who's trying to onboard, manage the relationship and renew and maybe expand, like you are looking for unicorn profiles there. To expect someone to be good at all of those things is really hard. Whereas, finding someone who can be really good at that early stage, at the onboarding and early setup and project management and detail focus and that stuff, getting is one profile. Getting a profile to renew and also be a consultative thought partner throughout the life cycle of those, that's a great profile, very findable. And finding someone who's going to drive renewals and expansions, very commercially minded, that person probably can't do implementations well. So like there's these couple different profiles, and none of them are better or worse, but it's really hard to find somebody who can do all of those things. Those people are unicorns. So
guys, we only have 7 more minutes, and I want to make sure that we tackle all the questions that were coming from our audience. Sara, you have one. One of the most critical points in the customer journey lies with the sales team. In your view, what is the ideal way for the sales team to contribute and to participate in this customer journey?
Well, from my experience, what we're doing with the sales team is collaborate very closely. But because our implementation is also led by a professional services team, because our implementation is fairly long, so customer success is in charge, but we have a full technical team to support us every step of the way. So I think we have loads of touch points with our sales team, and we have made sure to include different phases of the customer journey. The first one is obviously sales and how we handle the handover from sales to customer success and professional services, and then also the business as usual part, where sales actually needs us for references, for case studies, etc. So I think that's the way that we've been looking at it, always in a collaborative effort and saying what works, what doesn't work, what are the challenges. Let's be all open to talk about it.
Do you also implement a shared KPI model or shared OKRs? I often saw in other type of organizations that this principle often helps, because it's not the sale, where the sales doesn't necessarily own the volume, but it also owns the quality. And then somehow it also helps on what comes next. And if you have shared OKRs, usually the customer journey is often smoother. Not sure. Do you guys have this, where you've seen it implemented in the companies you are working, where you've used to work? Okay.
Not from my side.
Okay.
And maybe I'm very, very lucky because our sales team is doing a great job, to be honest. And they don't send us completely unqualified customers. But yeah, so
I
not
found
my
that through. I found that like doing it with the vision of most salespeople actually really do care about what you're trying to do. I think there's a lot of like art, like pictures we put out there of, you know, the bad salesmen. Most of them are fantastic people who really care, and they do want their customer to be successful. And so if you can really get a long way by motivating them around, hey, this is how you can make sure that your customer is going to hit it off well with us. And they often will really dig into that because it's a point of pride for them to have successful customers who go on to be the marquee accounts in your business.
For sure. Sometimes it's about incentives and making sure that the incentives are set up in the right way as well. I mean, I've worked in a company before where, you know, commission for salespeople is obviously standard across the board, but they would receive their commission in tranches. So like one at signature, another at successfully passing the like opt-out phase if there is one, and then another actually at renewal point as well, so that there is like full financial alignment between the salesperson and actually bringing in the right types of deals for the business as well.
That's a very good example, and it's another type of implementing the shared OKR perspective. Going back to the questions from our audience, how AI can improve CS and the enterprise value? So I think the question is, how do we leverage AI to improve the value that we deliver? Do we use it?
We use it for conversation. We're using conversation analytics and note taking for that in customer calls right now. I'm trying to use it for data analysis. I haven't gotten very far yet. Next week we have a company hackathon, and one of the things I'm going to be sitting down to do is really trying to map out some better automations. And so I'm hoping I can maybe come out with some more stuff there, but I've been left a little flummoxed on this for our field so far, because I'm not going to put an AI agent on customers yet. Support, whole different ball game, but for CS, I'm not quite there yet. I see like health predictions is the big thing that took. Health prediction has taken a huge jump forward with the empowering of AI. People have been doing it for the last 10 years with different algorithms, but that has taken a big jump forwards. So that's a better in quality there. I think the key is that none of these things can help you unless you have your data house in order. You have to get your data house in order for any of these tools to help you, whether it's automation or whether it's AI, because they all feed off of data, and garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
Porter, you have one question. What KPIs and metrics are required for a good CS strategy?
I think you really this is going to be very specific to your business, but you have to define what does success mean, and the key to that is going to be segmentation, because it's very hard to define a criteria for success from a data-driven standpoint that is applicable across your entire customer base. So for us, for instance, we're looking at a percentage of footprint is essentially what we are. It's the number of interviews going through a customer's applicant tracking system. That doesn't matter to any of you, but it's essentially our footprint within a customer. And the way we measure that for one class of customer has to be different than a different class of customer. So segmenting those customers allows us to define success appropriately for different segments. So a lot of these things first come back to what are your use cases and what are your segments? And for each of those buckets, now you can start defining some useful KPIs. But I believe you've got to have KPIs around adoption. You've got to have KPIs around satisfaction, and also you've got to have probably not KPIs, but data definitions of stakeholder engagement and champion management, that kind of stuff. And that's hard, but is often what I found some of the most important pieces for identifying red flags coming in accounts.
Yeah.
More so than adoption.
I think I suggest because our time is somehow up, and I know that some people mentioned that they have to jump into other meetings, and I want to be mindful with your time as well. I think Gianni asked the follow-up questions on the incentives between sales and CS. I think you covered partially Christopher his answer, but Gianni, I encourage you to connect with Christopher. I would say offline or LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, where Christopher, if you are okay with, I'm gonna pass the question and maybe send a more detailed reply to Gianni. He wants to know, how do you keep the incentives between sales and CS as fair as possible? If you are hiring salespeople to do CS, how do you motivate them to not want to do sales for the commission part? If you have some experience, maybe we can tackle this offline. And I know that you also had, Porter, one thing, Maggie. I think if you ask me, I might be wrong, but I think Maggie wants the details of the way you implemented the digital strategy, the content connection, and how you rolled it out. I think if you ask me, that's the program. She is.
I see. It's a smorgasbord of it's a tech stack. It's not a single program. It's a tech stack of multiple things interacting with each other and leveraging the content. So to deliver it effectively at the right time. It's not one tool.
Okay, but what I encourage everyone who registered, please connect on LinkedIn and follow both Sara, Porter, and Christopher. Get in touch with them. I know that they're very responsive, and I know that they will be willing to help and share from their experience. And with that, I think it's a wrap. Huge thanks to all of you for joining us, for contributing, for your questions, and to Sara, Christopher, and Porter for sharing their expertise. I want to wish you all a wonderful holiday season filled with rest, joy, and some time to recharge, because CS people do need it. And don't forget about, as you bring these strategies to life, Custify can definitely help you make it happen without the Grinch level effort. And we'll see you next year. Thank you all for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Irina.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.